for the next few minutes, but I can't promise you that. So I may make it through this, I may not, and I know you can understand. Got friends here from all over, friends from high school, if you can imagine. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary, or reunion, I guess you'd call it. And some of you know that the day that Gail passed away, that very day was our 40th wedding anniversary. So she was holding out. So there's so many here that she loved, and rather than miss any of all of y'all, rather than mentioning every name, I'm just going to mention a few. First of all, her mother desperately wanted to be here. We saw her, Justin and I did, a couple of weeks ago, but she is sick with a pretty bad cold, and her and Gail's brother Alan are watching via the stream right now, and we know that we just wish that we could be as spry as she is. Her mother will be 91 next month, and doing good, doing real good, just a bad cold. So, and then the other two that I'll mention right now, her sisters, Nancy and Debbie. They were all so close. They talked by phone almost every day. As a matter of fact, Gail and her mother would talk. I could go to the store, get groceries, come back, and they'd probably still be talking. And what was really funny was Justin and I would laugh and kid each other because first one and then the other would say, well, I'm going to let you go now. Oh, but did you hear about, and then it would go on. And then the other one would say, well, I'm going to go fix dinner now, but what did you think about, and they would continue to talk. And I mean, they literally could talk for hours, and they did sometimes. And for those of you that knew Gail for a long time, and those that you've known her just recently, maybe within the last few years, she really was kind of a reserved person. She was a little quiet to begin with, but once she got to know you, Katie barred the door. She could talk. She loved to talk. And she was somebody that was just genuinely warm, I think. So it made it easier to talk with her, and she loved everybody. She just unconditional. So and I know the family has probably all heard about Gailisms, a thing that I call Gailisms. And the great thing about it was she could laugh at the Gailisms just as well as we could laugh at the Gailisms. Probably the first one was early in our relationship, and we were watching a football game. It was Alabama football, of course, Roll Tide. And she asked, which one is the hupper? And I said, do what? She said, which one's the hupper? And I said, what are you talking about? She said, the one that gives the ball to the quarterback. And I said, the center? And she said, yeah. I said, why do you call it the hupper? And she said, well, they go hup. So, and then there was another Gailism. We were moving from Macon to Montgomery, and so we went over one weekend searching for a house, and we'd been looking all day long, and we got really tired, and so we'd go back to the hotel room. Let's go back and rest a little bit, and then we'll go back out and look a little bit more, and then we'll go get something to eat. So while we're in the room, we turn on the TV, and there was a football game on. It wasn't Alabama this time. And so she was looking at it, and she said, who is Flast? And Justin and I both said, do what? And she said, Flast. So we look at the TV, and it said F-L-A-S-T, or Florida State. She wanted to know who Flast was. So that's a Gailism. I could go on for quite a while because there was quite a few Gailisms. And like I said, she would laugh at herself too. So, and many of you know that she was a Foxaholic, okay? If the TV was on, 90% of the time you could go in and it was on Fox News, okay? And I could be in my office upstairs and hear her, and she just fussing and talking, giving somebody down the road. And you knew it was on Fox News, so And it's also, I'll tell you, where my office is, even upstairs, where she sat, I could hear every word she was saying, and those of you who talked to her very much, she always used a speakerphone. She didn't like to do this, so she used a speakerphone. I could hear both sides of the conversation. She'd get always upset because somebody asked something that I would answer, because I could. So she'd get upset with me, get butt out of my conversation. Many of you know that over the years, we moved many times. Y'all quit. When I say many times, we lived in some places 3 different times, okay? We lived in several different time zones. We lived in almost every state in the Southeast. And some of that was my company's moving me to go into another radio or TV station. Some of it was just my ego and me wanting to help increase our way of living and, and get a promotion or something. So, but even with all the moves, Gail never once pushed back. Every time she'd say, wherever you are, I'm there with you. And so, and like I said, she made friends everywhere. But she had 2 that she called her besties. Some 40 years ago, we moved back to Chattanooga after we'd moved away. And I met Vicki Dickerson, who I worked with at the time at WDOD Radio. And John and Vicki and this John and Gail became the best friends, and we've been best friends for 40 years, almost 40 years. And then when we moved to Dothan, Alabama a few years ago, she made another bestie, Teresa Gerton. And she talked to them virtually every day. So you can imagine, as she's sitting at home, about 2/3 of the day was talking on the phone and watching Fox. So, but she would talk to them almost every day. And so that was what she valued more than anything else, was her friends. And her church friends, Steve and Teresa and other folks some that came all the way from Dothan, Alabama, where we went to church. We made friends, and Monty, who we made friends with there in Dothan, and others that are here. We sure do appreciate it. She would certainly appreciate it. Through all of her sickness and surgeries, and I can't even count how many surgeries she had, and a lot of sickness over the years. She had cancer the first time 29 years ago, beat it. She had cancer again 2.5 years ago and beat it. And then about 10 months ago, it was metastatic breast cancer, came back, and this time she couldn't beat it. God called for her. Right now, I'd like to get all of our grandchildren to come up here, please. Come on, Tanner. Come on, buddy. So she loved our children desperately. But she fought because of these right here. We've all heard that if we knew how much of a joy they are, we'd have them first. They brought joy to her every day of her life. Thank you again for being here. We appreciate it very, very, very much. I think the kids, they want to get some pictures.
When I think of my nanny, I think of 3 words that describe her. Fighter. Nanny had cancer 3 times, beginning in 1993. The first 2 times she knocked it out, but we all know that this last time was different and difficult for her. And while she was defeated physically, she fought all the way through with her spirits high, trusting in God every step of the way. The second word I think of is loving. Nanny was that person who loved and cared for everyone she came across. This applies especially to her family and friends. She loved her children and grandchildren unconditionally. We could have messed up an infinite number of times, and we have, and she would have loved us the same. As I've grown through my 15 long years on this earth, I've had the privilege of watching my nanny and pawpaw love each other with a Christ-like type love. Which brings me to my third word I think of when I think of my nanny. Supportive. She supported the people she loved in many different ways. I know from a grandchild's perspective, she supported us no matter what we did. From sports to school and church-related events, she was always proud of us and for us. For her children, she was proud of the great parents and adults they became. Finally, she was very supportive and proud of my papa, of the great Christian father and grandfather he became. Overall, our nanny was undoubtedly the strongest, most loving, and most supportive person I will ever know.
I'm going to get my 85 theses out here. First of all, I just want to thank John for the opportunity. You all quickly learn I'm just like a big crybaby, so just disregard all that. So like John mentioned and I eloquently stated, like they came into our lives when they moved to Dothan, Alabama, and the truth is, Teresa and Gail like had this great friendship, and I think I just got dragged along. So that's just kind of like the truth of the matter. But and John too. So there you go. So this is from Teresa. Hey, Gail Rod. 9 years ago, you and your family walked into the Westgate Church of Christ, and that was the beginning of our friendship. We handpicked each other. Of the things we did together, the best was going to the Social Security office. And on grounds of incrimination, we won't talk about what happened at the Social Security office. We laughed till we cried, and since then, we have laughed. And diets, every month, we started a new diet. That's 108 diets in 9 years. We finally decided that God made us with more taste buds than anyone else. You let me be a part of your family. Brad getting married, the birth of his boys, which if you look at Tanner, you will always see Gail. Easton, the baseball king, and Angela graduating from nursing school, and her children. Jackson, become a future #1 draft pick. Jackson, I have someone I want you to meet. My son, he's a financial planner. He'll do a good job for you. All right. Smith, the sweetest one with those eyes. Anderson, no one can forget Anderson. Always doing something to make you laugh. You loved your family. And don't forget Justin. He always wanted to be like John. Justin, your mom loved you. John, I guess you could say she handpicked you. She loved you so much, and you took care of her the best you could. Your plate was full. And yes, John, I was mad at you for moving to Montgomery. But not as mad as when you moved to Tennessee. I thought I would never get to see Gail. But I know God had his hand in it because he made a way. Gail was at our home when she found her lump. A few days later, our fears were answered. Cancer again. Gail Rod, you fought a hard battle, but it came back in one place and then another, but you kept fighting. I prayed that God would take you out of your pain, and he did, and you're hard at work with him now. And we are left a broken heart and memories. 9 years seemed like a lifetime. I will always love you, my friend, my sister in Christ, and my sister in life. If I could say one more thing, time. Time was all Gail ever wanted, was your time. Slow down, people. Share your time with ones that need it. And Gail Rod, I wish you had a telephone. And that's truth. God has a way of bringing people together. I think we don't really realize that as much as we should. That when people come into your life, chances are God has something to teach you, or God has something for you to teach that person. When times like this happen, I think we all need maybe some wisdom. And I really know of no other place to get wisdom than this book right here that many of you in this room love and adore, read and consume and struggle to try to understand. And sometimes we make it way more complicated than it should be. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, Solomon writes these words: "A good name is better than precious ointment in the day of death than the day of birth. It's better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. The house of fools is in the house of mirth." When we read Solomon's words, and we know Solomon is often described as the wisest man that ever lived, we also know Solomon didn't live a perfect life. Solomon made a lot of decisions in his life that really, and if you really look at it from our perspective, probably were pretty foolish. But these words are from God. And I was thinking about these words when I was asked to do this. And I was thinking about what I wanted to say. And you know, one of the things that I think Solomon is trying to communicate when he tells us that it's better to be in a house of mourning than a house of feasting is because being in a place like this, in a circumstance like this, gives us a different perspective about life. And maybe it makes us stop just for a second or for a minute to take stock. It reminds us of how short life is. You know, I listened to a guy the other day, and he was talking to a bunch of graduates, and one of the first things that he said is he said that you don't have all the time you think you have. Teresa shared a post with me this morning from Facebook, and you know, we all have our opinion about Facebook, but there are some good things out there if we'll use it. But it talked about how, you know, what's the difference between money and time? We all know how much money we have. None of us knows how much time we have. We have today. That's all we're promised. We have today. The house of mourning reminds us of that. And I think the other thing that maybe it's better to be in this time and this circumstance is because then we also recognize how precious life truly is. And that we should cherish every day and cherish every moment and cherish every friendship and cherish every person that God sends into our life, whoever that person is, because that person is made in the image of God. Every person. Not just the ones we like. Not just the ones we make friends of. Every person carries about within them that image of God. And maybe it teaches us some humility. God places people into our lives to teach us lessons. And also I think He puts people in our lives to teach us our need and our longing and our hunger for connection. Connection to care about somebody, to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. As was been powerfully demonstrated just a few minutes ago, how important family is. God puts people into our lives, and He puts us in our family. And now some of us might not want to be in the family we're in, but they're your family, right? And so then that teaches us, and family is also bigger than just blood connection. Teresa loved Gail as a sister and considered her a sister. I don't know why. It's just people have connections, right? You meet somebody and you have that connection. And I also think that God puts people in our lives to teach us the importance of grace. Because the truth is, I'm an imperfect person. I'm a flawed person. And I might look good. I got my suit and my tie on. I got my glasses on. And I have this joke that I tell about, you know, if you ever see me in a coat and tie, you know my IQ is 50 points higher. So if you ever see me without my coat and tie on, and if you ever see me with my coat and tie on, I have an average IQ. Okay, so there you go. That's my self-deprecating joke that I have, right? So, but we have to extend grace to people because we're all imperfect people. And we all don't think the same way. We all don't believe the same way. Believe it or not, Some of us don't watch Fox News all the time. Some of us don't even want to watch cable news at all. I think we just need to believe that God is in control, and God is in control, and God is in control. And He's going to take care of us if we believe in Him and if we'll trust Him. And I think God puts people in our lives so that we can do the one thing God put us on the earth to do. And that's to love my fellow man, to love my neighbor as I love myself. And as Jesus so powerfully answered that question, who is my neighbor? It's not the person that lives next to you. It's anybody who needs something, who needs God's grace, who needs God's love. Finally, God knows our hearts today. God knows our hearts better than we know our own heart. I know that because Jesus came. God became flesh and dwelt among us. He lived with us. He walked with us. He experienced life with us. He understands what it means to be a little boy. He understands what it means to be a child of imperfect parents. He understands and knows what it's like to lose a friend to death. John chapter 11, Jesus has been told that his friend Lazarus is sick and he's dying. And we all know that story. Jesus waits because he wants to demonstrate God's glory and God's. But when Jesus shows up in Bethany, Mary and Martha are there, and they're upset with him. They tell him, if you had been here, he would not have died. And so they go to the tomb. This is beautiful, powerful picture of who Jesus is as a man. But I also think it's a beautiful and powerful picture of who Jesus is as God. We all know that. Shortest verse in the Bible. Maybe the most profound verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. Why did Jesus cry? Well, of course, he cried because his friend had died. Somebody he loved and cared about, just why we're here, why we cry now. But he also cried because he knew that death isn't supposed to be here. People aren't supposed to die. God didn't create us to die. We die because of sin. That's why we die. But Jesus came to do away with that. There's a day coming when there will no longer be any death. There will no longer be any cancer. He came to make a way for us. I know that there are people that believe in Jesus here today, and you should embrace that, and you should share that, and you should declare that. But if you don't know Jesus, know He loves you more than we love ourselves. I know you didn't come here to hear a sermon, but that's what I am, John. I'm sorry. But I'm so grateful to God for bringing me into your lives and for you coming into my life, to Teresa's life. It's been a great blessing and honor to be a part of this service. And I pray God's blessing on your family and God's comfort on your family, and to know the great hope that we have. We don't have to grieve like people that don't know Jesus. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Well, I'm Ryan. Most of you know me here, but I'm the preacher and the favorite son-in-law. Only favorite son-in-law. That's the settled labeling me and Gail had of one another. I would be her favorite son-in-law, and she would be my favorite mother-in-law. And I've tried to live up to my end, and she definitely lived up to hers. She was more than I could ask for in a mother-in-law, and she loved me as if I were her own. Although not many mother-in-laws would use profanity at you. Let me explain. There's two words that I don't like to hear, and two words I can't believe that my mother-in-law would repeatedly tell me for years, and they've already been spoken today, and those two words are, oh my goodness. She loved her Alabama elephants. That's what I told her. And I know she didn't say much because she wasn't one, Justin, to brag that when Alabama repeatedly beats Georgia. But I know deep down she loved watching Alabama beat Georgia. I was wondering actually in some of those pictures, and I saw them for the first time a couple of days ago, why Angela was wearing an Alabama shirt. So I've been tricked, or definitely some conversations that need to happen later on. But Gail was unique. She was unique. She was the most gullible person I had ever met in my life. And being the good and favorite son-in-law that I'm supposed to be, it was quite often that I was pulling some prank or telling her something, and she would believe me. And I had a good time doing those. I had a good time playing pranks and jokes on her, but to hear her laugh when she finally got it was worth it all. To see that look on her face when she figured it out that I was playing one on her, I believe it was priceless. And most all of you have a memory of Gail, and we have sat here today, and Steve and John and Jackson told me he was going to make it through it, and I said, no, you won't. But that's all right. But we've stood here and listened to what Gail means to so many people and how she has influenced so many people. But John, something's to be said of you, because you were by her side for 40 years, helping her through every diagnosis, through every sickness, through every illness. On December 10th, 1981, I believe that's right, you held hands with her, as you said, I do. And exactly 40 years later, as she took her last breath, you held her hands once more. And every step along that journey, you were there for her. And that was God's plan for you, to help her along her journey, to help her through her sickness and her illness, and to build a life together, a life of joy and a life of adventure. You know, life can be hard. Life can be hard for many reasons. It can be devastating on some days. Life can take from you. Life can bring you to your knees. But life also teaches us, because we get to decide how we see life. We get to decide on how we respond to the things that life brings us. You know, the statement is true that every one of us, we preach our own funeral. And what that means is our everyday life, by how we speak, how we act, how we treat other people, our acts of love, whether big or small, they become the content of days like today. And what we have heard here today is true. Gail was full of life. She was full of words. Yes, she was full of words. She was full of love, full of laughter, a fighter spirit, supportive, as Jackson said, to all of us, no matter what we were doing. But most of all, she faced life and all that life brought her with a faith in God. And she proved that over and over with the way that she trusted God. But it also took each of you, your family and friends, with those words of encouragement and the countless prayers that you sent to God on her behalf. Gail's story has been written, and yours is still being written. So my prayer today is that your faith in God is as resilient as hers was, that you too depend on God the way She depended on God every step of your life. The Apostle Paul knew that he was at the end of his life, and he said this about his long, faith-filled life. And I'm just going to read two scriptures, two different passages. This is the first one. Paul said, "As for me, my life has already been poured out as an offering to God. The time of my death is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race, and I have remained faithful. And now the prize awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And the prize is not just for me, but for all who eagerly look forward to his appearing." And I want to close with what Jesus said to his disciples as Jesus began to give comfort to them for his departure from earth. He says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know the way to the place where I am going." Again, thank you so much for being here. As John said earlier, Gail would be super excited, and she'd love to sit and talk with all of you, but to know that all of you are here today and all of you have been praying for her family. I do want to close with a word of prayer, and after the prayer you will be dismissed, and I believe most of the family and friends that have traveled know that there is a meal prepared. Go out this door and right to the left. Can't miss it. Smell the barbecue. All right, let's close with a word of prayer. Father, we love you so much. We thank you for loving us enough to send us your Son, who would live the perfect life for us, Father.